Why did I stay with my shitty ex? Am I in a toxic relationship? How am I going to move on and find love? We're your hosts, Izzy
and Meredith.
And welcome to ExFacts, Relationships and Breakups. Relationships are confusing. When they end, we're left picking up the pieces and wondering what went wrong. So, each episode on ExFacts, we'll hear stories from real people sharing their experiences in relationships. We'll also hear from experts to help us uncover the deeper meaning behind our actions and emotions. At the end of every episode, we'll answer a listener's question. No topic is off limits, so ask us anything you want to know. From conflict and healing to dating and love, ExFacts will take you on a mind-blowing journey to explore all aspects of our amazing, imperfect, frustrating relationships. Hi everyone, welcome to our first episode of ExFacts, Relationships and Breakups. So we're your hosts, Meredith and Isabel, or Izzy. Hi.
Hello.
So I'm Izzy. I'm the co-founder of ExFacts, which is an app that seeks to help people make better relationship decisions. And on this podcast, we want to share stories from real people, talking about the relationships, because I feel like there's sometimes a stigma against talking about relationships and bad experiences you've had. And we want to just kill that stigma and make it so people can share their story and you can learn from people who've been through things maybe that are similar from you or different from you, but learn from that so you can go forward and make the best relationships you can find and be happy and heal in yourself and your journey and be just happier with yourself. So that's what we want to do. And welcome. So here's Meredith.
Good transition. Hi, I'm Meredith. I am a very amateur model and soon-to-be ex-housewife. We can unpack that later, but the gist is I did not have a bad relationship. I actually had a very beautiful and wonderful relationship, but it took me until now in my elderly years to realize who I was and what I wanted. And it did not align with the life that I had set out with my current husband. He's an angel. Everyone should slide into his DMs. But yeah, this is my journey. I'm terrified, but excited.
Thank you, Meredith. So one, you're not elderly.
Getting up there.
But yeah, no, so I'm so excited to have you. We just want to talk about everything about relationships. Every week we're going to either talk together or we're going to have an expert on or someone who's been through something. We're going to hear just about their stories and we're going to discuss topics. We all have different opinions. We all come from different places. So that's our goal. And yeah, thanks. Okay. So I'm so excited to introduce our guest, Urvi Shah, who is a lovely and inspirational person and who I've learned so much with ever since we found each other. And I'm so grateful that she's here on our very first episode. And I can't wait for you to get to know her. Urvi is the founder of Inner Serenity Life Coach and is a spirituality and life coach who helps people to accept themselves and to give their soul a little TLC. So she has her own podcast also, which is called The Soul Diaries. So you guys should all check that out. So welcome, Urvi, to our very first show.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Izzy and Meredith, for having me here on your first show. I'm also very grateful for both of you for inviting me here, and I'm excited for this episode.
Me too. So yeah, do you want me to just share your story with us? Tell us about how your relationships in the past have led you, either with yourself or with a partner, have led you on this journey to become a coach and an inspirational person.
Yeah, so I think my whole life, in terms of relationships and dating, I was always seeking validation from my relationships, I think is the best way to say it. Or like, I would feel like, oh, I have a crush on this person. My life will be complete if I'm with them, like when I was in high school. And obviously a lot of pain came through all of that, especially when you crush on somebody that's like doesn't even know that you exist in high school. Like that's a big thing. But then when I got to college and I started dating, I was in a long relationship. Actually, it was like 5 years, and it actually went all the way up to an engagement, and then we broke it off.
Wow.
But I was trying to find myself, I think, through that relationship, and I was trying to validate who I was. I really didn't have as much confidence at that time. My self-esteem was very low. Um, I was not the same person I am now. And so I kind of did whatever he wanted me to, or if he was like upset about something, I would be like the first one to say sorry or the first one to like fix things, even though it was his fault and I knew it was his fault. Um, but I couldn't like not be in that relationship because I felt like that gave me fulfillment. And what happened actually is he proposed, and I even remember the day he proposed. I wasn't too sure if I wanted to say yes or no, but in my mind I was like, you just got to go through with it. Like, you've been in this relationship for 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, why would you say no now? Even though like I had that gut reaction to say no, because I knew that like if I had gotten married to him, it wouldn't last. And so then we got engaged and a bunch of things happened and we were fighting all the time. And I started in that journey of like, we were engaged for I think 5 months, but in those 5 months, like I started to really question who I was and why I was really like giving in all of the time. And so I actually broke it off. I had a conversation with him and I was trying to see if he would like kind of come to an understanding of like understanding me, respecting me was a big thing. Like, I don't think you really respected me. But I kind of like put a blind eye to all of that for 5 years. And after I broke off that relationship, I kind of was, I don't want to say I was depressed because I wasn't diagnosed with being depressed, but it felt like depression. Like I was really sad for about a month. Like I didn't eat for about 2, 3 weeks. I just was like really lost. I didn't know who I was because I had devoted so much to this relationship that I thought made who I was. I also broke off a lot of relationships in terms of like friends and like my family, and like I didn't really have I had a really good relationship with my parents before and they supported me through all of it, but I think I fought with them a lot, my brother, another person. And like when this all happened, I just had a lot of guilt inside of me. Like, why didn't I listen to them? And there's just a lot of stuff that was going on. And eventually I came around and I started to um really like ask myself, like, what does it mean for me to love myself? Like I started to like, I guess, read books and listen to other people and inspirational people, and I started to understand like I need to start seeking that validation from myself. I need to love myself first, and if I'm fulfilled and then I go on to a relationship, I'm not seeking for validation or seeking for that person to fulfill me. I'm actually just bringing my best self to the relationship, and we're just supporting each other through life through our common goals.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I mean, and it's such a relatable story. Like I know that, I've been in relationships and you feel like you invest so much and then you're like, well, why should I break it off now? You know what I mean? Because it's like, maybe I should have done that like 5 years ago or, 4 years ago. We're already down this path, but it's important to know that no matter where you are, you can always like leave, and it's just a decision that you need to make. And, it doesn't matter like what Meredith was saying, she's been married, that nothing that came before means that you have to change. Like there's no prohibition on changing at any point in your life and making the decision to like decide to love yourself, and invest time in yourself,
Mm-hmm.
So like at what point in the relationship do you think, looking back, 2020 hindsight, did you think you knew that it wasn't like going to work out?
I think I knew from the first, so the relationship, though we were together for 5 years, like there were points through the relationship where he wanted to like take a break. And so then he wouldn't really talk to me for maybe like a week or 2 weeks. But like I was still like committed to the relationship. So I was like, yeah, just take your time. And like I had known probably early on, like, because he needed to take this time to like, to himself, and he wasn't really committed, I don't think. I knew that that wasn't the respect that I deserved, but I also felt like I really liked him. I wanted to see where it was going, like just give him a second chance. It's okay, people make mistakes. And I kept making excuses for him. But I knew early on. And I think when we got into engagement, for me, it was like more of a aha moment, I think, because it was like, okay, I'm gonna marry this person. Like this is like a bigger commitment than us just like dating. Like,
Yeah.
and him saying, like, I just want to break, like, do I want to be married to this person and it doesn't work out and go through a whole process of divorce? And even then, through the process of divorce, what would that be like with this person?
Yeah.
And so I think during the engagement, that's really when I started to be more serious about how he was acting towards me.
I think that's a big theme in relationships, especially right before they end. There's usually a big inducer of that, right? Like for me, it wasn't marriage, but it was the pressure to have a child. And it was building and building. And I knew that something wasn't right and it wasn't what I should be doing. And that was sort of the impetus for me to dissolve my relationship. So it's usually some big thing where you start to really sit down and look at what's happening and what you really want.
Absolutely. Yeah. I believe that too.
Yeah, definitely. So what do you think, like, did you feel like society was, telling you, I know you were saying you felt like guilty and all these different emotions, which always happens, when you break up. Did you feel like there was something in society or like you feeling pressured from your family or friends or just like looking online or something that made you want to stay, made you think you should stay? Like, I feel like a lot of problems in relationships come from the word should, there's nothing you should be doing. It's just you should be doing what makes you happy, and so anything else is like outside external things coming and like telling you what you should do.
Yeah, I think there was a pressure. I don't want to say like there was a society pressure, but I think I was putting pressure on myself in the sense of like I had my life pretty much planned out by the T, um, which I think this also added to the whole thing. I really feel like it was the universe telling me like you need to surrender, like you can't control this much of your life. But anyways, I had my life planned, like I knew like when, like by what age I wanted to be married, what age I want to have kids, to have like the perfect, like, planned out life, right? And so for me, it was like, we were 2 years in, I was like, well, if he proposes and this is perfect because I don't want to like leave this relationship, then try to find somebody else. And it was all about the plan. Like it was all about the checklist that I had. And so I was putting a lot of pressure on myself. And also at that point in time, I think I fought with like my parents a lot because they weren't too sure about him. And like for me, it was like being right, I think, was more important. Like I have to go through this because I don't want my parents to be right. I don't want them to like, and hindsight, it just sounds really stupid because they were just trying to, look out for my best interest. But for me at that time, it was very much like I have to like let this just move forward and like this has to just work out. And there was a lot of that pressure. Also with my friends, like my friends also didn't, they knew that he wasn't ideal for me, I guess. And so they were looking out for me as well. And I fought with them a lot. A lot of them stopped talking to me during that period of time.
Wow.
Now we're all friends again. But I think because of all of that happening, I just felt like, well, like there's a lot of investment I'm putting into this thing. Like it has to like give me something back. And I had to see it through.
I can definitely relate to that. I feel like I've been through a few relationships and breakups, and like breaking up is so difficult that it's almost like a barrier to exit in of itself,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because you know, you're like, oh, do I really feel like being depressed for 6 months right now? No. Do I feel like
Moving out.
Yeah, exactly. You know, moving out of Meredith's beautiful house. Um, so, you know, there's no convenient time, you know, in your life. And I feel like that's just in general a barrier that people find for changing things too. You know, it's like there's no convenient time to just be like, oh, I'm going to go on a diet, for instance. Like that sucks. So, you know, all these things, you know, but if you push it off longer and longer, sometimes it gets even trickier, but there's always time to, you know, make a change.
Well, I think the planning too is super relatable for a lot of people. I mean, that's essentially what I did too. I had the years and everything ticked off, and it's almost more about that than it is about the other person, which is counterintuitive. But yeah, you have to actually look at who you're with and are you happy versus here's where I'm supposed to be at this time because society tells me that's what's conventionally acceptable.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a big part of it. I think the other part was like, I knew I was graduating from college soon, and I would start working, and my parents would obviously start talking about marriage and stuff like that. And for me, I didn't really want them to find somebody for me, because that's a very big thing in our culture is like arranged marriages and stuff. And so I was like, I'll just find the person I want to marry. And I was dating this person, and I was like, okay, this is gonna be the one. Like, I didn't want to take the time. There was a lot of like, I guess I was being lazy about it. I don't know. I didn't want to take the time to meet other people because I was already in this and it was convenient. It was the convenience of it. Like, it was convenient for me to stay. I was comfortable in it, even though it wasn't the best situation. I just knew all of the nuances about it, and I knew how we fought with each other. And it was like that comfort that I had. And I couldn't leave that, even though it was not the best thing for me.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, you know, and I feel like another thing that, you know, that I thought we could discuss is like you know, the fear that's associated with leaving and then the anxiety that's also associated with that, or just the fear that's associated with all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah. So I think after the breakup, a lot of things just manifested in my life, in terms of like, you know, I went through that period of like short period of just feeling like my life sucked and I didn't want to do anything, to then a period of like having anxiety. So I didn't want to go out because I knew my friends wanted to set me up with other guys and I wasn't really interested. And it just like, you know, one thing after another, like I just was ignoring things and not addressing those feelings or those emotions, um to a point where I just had anxiety like all the time for even little things like going to a new place and driving there. Like I wouldn't want to drive. Like I would have so much anxiety just getting into a car and driving. Which might sound like, how does that happen? But I feel like all of these events led up to that because I didn't pay attention to it. And so um, I started, actually, I didn't really know about it until after I got married. And, you know, on the relationship front, things were okay, but I got married and I started to kind of understand that the anxiety was still there.
yeah.
And some of the insecurities were still there from the last relationship that I just carried forward because I never really addressed them. And I was like, I can't live life this way. Like I chose, like there has to be another way. And so I started getting into mindfulness. Like I started to meditate. I started to like focus on my breath. And that's actually what led me to become a coach. Things just started to open up in my life where I felt like I was led to kind of teach other women about the same stuff. Like you don't have to, you know, live a life where you feel like you're stuck or you don't have a way out. Um, in my journey, I realized that a lot of what was happening was because I was choosing to let other people influence me and not really be in the seat of, um, you know, influencing my own life. Like everybody else's opinion mattered to me so much more, and I was acting based off of that. And that was very fear induced because people would be like, well, you're getting really old and you're not married and you're not going to find anybody. And I'm like, wow, but I wasn't ready to go back into the dating world. And like, I started to do a lot of things that didn't make sense to me internally, but because of the fear, I was like, okay, maybe I should do it. And like, that just one thing after another led to, you know, to me actually then understanding that I need to choose to live a different life. Um, in relationships, I was always kind of the one that was sort of doing everything in the sense of like the giver. And I would just continuously give, and all of these were like kind of masking some of my wounds that were inside of me or my insecurities. And I think mindfulness opened up like that awareness of like all of the things that I'm doing, but on a deeper sense. Like I started to journal as well at that time. So after a meditation, if something came up, I would just write it down, and I would go back and read my journals. It's like, oh yeah, this makes sense. And through that, like I started coaching, and then obviously I had my own coaches that helped me like work on myself a lot more in my internal world. But yeah, I think mindfulness was the tool that really opened up the doors for me.
That's so great. I mean, I know I've always personally wanted to meditate. I just feel like I'm like the anti-meditation.
It's hard. I've also tried. And then you're like, what are we going to eat later?
I know. It's like I want to train to do it, but like, I don't know. I'm just like, I'm that kid or the adult, actually. I'm not a kid anymore. But like I'm that adult on the beach who's like still like building sandcastles. Like I can't, like the worst thing to me is like thinking about sitting on a beach, like reading a book. So like I just can't sit still. And that probably has to do with like that anxiety and that fear and all that stuff. And like that's why I think meditation would probably be really useful for me. So you've inspired me to maybe think about doing.
Yeah, let's make a pact.
Yeah.
You and I will start meditating.
We'll start with 1 minute.
Well, and it was actually like that for me too. Like, so my history with meditation is like, my parents were always very spiritual and into mindfulness. And so they taught me and my brother at a young age, but I was always like pretty resistant to it because it's like your parents are teaching you something, you're like, whatever. Like I was like that kid, like the kid that didn't want to do anything. Like I wanted to rebel against everything that they said at some point in time. And so my dad recommended to me, like when I was going through that rough patch, to do meditation. I was like, okay, like this isn't going to work out. And literally I could not sit straight for 1 minute. I was like, this isn't working. And like my mind had already made up that this is not going to work. And so I was just very resistant to it. And at that point in time, I downloaded this app called Headspace. I was able to just do 10 days for 5 minutes. And then I was like, oh, this is like, it's helping me. Like I felt a little bit more calmer. I started to focus more on my breath. And then that just kind of opened the door for me. So you never know, like just try for 2 minutes or even 1 minute.
The only thing that kind of worked for me is like this, and I don't even know if it's meditation, but it's like the Oculus. I don't know. There's this thing and it's like you kind of, it like is visually like overstimulating. So like you kind of are just like, you can't think about anything else, but like, I don't know, it kind of worked for me.
That does seem helpful.
I mean, there are different forms of meditation. Like meditation is not just like closing your eyes and trying to like focus on your thoughts. Like there's so many different ways. There's the one that you mentioned. There's also another one which is like which I've taught, which is like actually coloring. Like so if you know those like focus coloring books or the adult coloring books, you can put on like meditative music and just color, and it'll like get you into a more calmer state.
How did you break through your hesitation or lack of ability to meditate? Was it just practice and repetition, or did you have like an aha moment?
It was pretty much practice. And to be very honest with you, like I didn't do it every day. I tried to do it whenever I could.
I don't know. My question is like, do you think when you meditate, or is like the point of it not to think? I'm always confused by that.
No, you have thoughts going. The point is not to interact with the thought. So like you can't shut your mind off. Your mind is constantly going to go. but the point is not to connect with it. It's like to detach yourself. And so what that looks like is like if you're like, if you're walking somewhere and there's cars passing by, like you're not like looking at every single car and memorizing the license plate or memorizing which car and which color. You're just letting them pass by, right? It's the same thing with your thoughts when you meditate. It's like, oh, okay, this thought came up. Okay, let that pass by. And it's like grounding yourself with something else. And so the science behind it is you can only do one thing at a time. And so that's why they say to pay attention to, you can either pick a mantra or affirmation, or you can pay attention to your breath, because your mind can only do one thing. And so if you're paying attention to your breath and going like inhale, exhale, or counting your breaths, your mind is not going, there's going to be thoughts that come up, but then you can direct your mind back to, the inhale, exhale, or whatever it is that you are focusing on.
Yeah, that's such a good metaphor, the car thing. Because Izzy, I bet you and I are big ruminators, just obsess over one little thing or several little things. And yeah, the point, right, what you're saying is that's okay, but then to move on.
Yeah, it's still to let it go. Like you're gonna have things that come up, especially when you're disturbed. You're gonna have things that come up, but those things are also important, I think, right? So like if you're having a bad day and you're like just in a really irritated mood and you're just kind of getting upset at everybody around you, it's a good time to just like pause and really like ask yourself like what's really going on? Like what triggered me today? And the great part is like your mind is able to do that analysis very quick if you ask it. It's just we don't take the time to really use our mind that way.
I think that's really powerful. And that kind of, I don't know, it gets to like a deeper question, of like, how do you, how do you deal when you're like having a bad day? You know what I mean? And those kind of things. And I feel like that's where meditation comes in, and all the other techniques that you've talked about, that I've listened to on your podcast come in, and are really helpful to people. Because, sometimes it's hard to like, kind of just have that reset. Sometimes it's like you let the next day come, and then you're like, okay, now I'm reset. But like, it's important to be able to like intervene, like do like crisis intervention quicker with your brain, instead of just letting time heal things. Cause like, I feel like the saying like time heals everything, it's kind of true, but like then you're not addressing what was wrong in the first place. Cause I know like for me with my relationships, you can see yourself falling into a pattern, where, for example, like I know that I'm also the type of person who like is the giver kind of in relationships, although maybe my boyfriend wouldn't say so.
No one would say that about me, so don't worry about it.
My boyfriend would not say that about my
big taker.
Yeah. Everyone has different roles, I feel like. And we just like, you gotta like, to address things, you have to address, your role and like whether you want to change it, you know what I mean? And like, so.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to that point, like everybody has their own tools, and I think it's important to understand what those things are for you. Like what are the things that help you heal? Like for me, it was meditation, it's art. Like I love to color or paint sometimes. I love to dance, though I'm not a good dancer. Like I'll just put on like my jam and I'll just start dancing, and that somehow elevates my mood. Like whatever it is. Sometimes I like to go for a walk. Sometimes I need to go on a hike and into nature. But like you need to discover what those things are for you. And take that time to then do those things. Like schedule them into your life, because I think we go on like autopilot, like especially with like planning life and making sure everything's like perfect, and I got to do these things, and like if I do this and this will happen, and like we're constantly stressing ourselves out with our own expectations, um that we don't really have fun. Like we might have fun for other people, but like for ourselves, like we don't take the time for ourselves to really have fun, and that's the whole point of life, is to have fun with yourself.
Yeah, something you said in one of your episodes was you scheduled 10 minutes to color. And I think that's such an important thing because for me and probably a lot of people, I'm like, I should meditate, I should work out, but I'm not even going to do it if I can't do it for an hour. And it's all or nothing rather than getting the small benefits of doing it for 10, 15 minutes at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's finding those things. Like some people, they can't go to the gym and work out because it's just not fun for them. So it's like, then don't torture yourself. There's so many other ways to, have a healthy lifestyle and like fit in fitness. Like you can go for walks, you can go into like a Zumba class, like whatever it is, like you got to figure out what's good for you without having without having that I need to do it because this person said so, or I need to do it because it worked for this person. Like it might not work for you, and that's okay. Like you have to figure out who you are at the end of the day.
Cool. Well, I'm so excited that Urvi came on our first episode of ExFacts. So to wrap things up, so we're gonna answer a question from our listeners. And so this is our first episode. We don't have any listeners yet. So I've been reaching out to some people on my Facebook group, Relationship ExFacts. So what did you do to heal from your past relationship?
Ladies first.
Okay, so for me, as I mentioned, mindfulness, but I think another thing that was really healing for me was like to really find out what makes me happy. So those activities that make me happy and to do them myself. And so I used to like go on hikes myself. I would like enroll in like different art classes and do that like all by myself. I would go to the movies by myself. Like I was literally dating myself at one point just to bring that love into my life and to feel fulfilled. Um, and I think that really helped me to heal because a lot of what my trauma was I need somebody else in my life to feel complete. And that wasn't the truth. It's not the truth. Like you don't really need, and you are already complete and you just need to understand that.
Yeah, good, definitely good answer. For me, I'm trying to think back. It was a long time since I was but I feel like I just, focused on being kind to myself in that time because, a lot of times you're thinking, well, now I gotta, lose weight. I have to, get back out there. I have to do all this and just give yourself time and be kind to yourself in that period. Because, for the first month or whatever, you just have to accept your emotions at the time and just let yourself go through grieving, healing, and just be kind to yourself. And then once, you start to move past that phase a little bit, I think what I did was just hang out with my friends a lot, go back to the things that I like to do, like, going on hikes, going on walks, playing tennis. I remember I started playing tennis.
We got to play.
Yeah, I know. How about you, Meredith? I know you're going through it right now. So.
Right. That's what I was going to say. It's a little different for me. I think the reason I made the choice to end my marriage and what I'm trying to do is exactly that. I never took the time when I was growing up to fully realize who I am and what I want and be okay with it. I think as a human, I'm not necessarily conventional by a lot of societal standards. And I've gotten a lot of judgment and criticism for that throughout my life, and I've internalized it. So right now, I really want to focus on really honing in on what I want and what makes me happy, regardless of whether or not it's accepted or praised by society, and be okay with that and not apologize for it. Like, as long as you're not hurting anyone, you should be able to do you and do what makes you happy. So I'm working on being okay with that.
It's beautiful.
Definitely. Yeah, no, definitely. So, well, thank you. Urvi, do you want to tell people how they can find you? No.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have an Instagram page. My handle is at Inner Serenity LC. You can find me on Facebook as well. I have a Facebook page and a Facebook group, which now I'm relaunching. Thanks to Izzy, I am inspired to create a Facebook page. And so it's called Creating Inner Peace for Women. And then I have my own podcast, as Izzy mentioned. It's called Soul Diaries. Find your or discover your inner serenity, and then YouTube channel. And I can send that all to Izzy so she can put it in the details.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I highly recommend listening to Urvi's podcast because I was truly inspired, and I know Meredith really
Me
liked
too.
it.
Yeah, so relatable. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
Well,
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Okay, until next time. Bye.
Bye.
Toodles.
We can just have an intermission right now.
Okay.
I'm gonna drink some more of my drink.
Do you want me to take down Jason,
No,
or do you want to leave him out?
Let's leave it up.
Continuity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stay with the continuity. If I'm like a zit on my face, I'm not rude. So. Thank you so much for listening. You can catch a new episode of ExFacts next week. Hit that follow button so you don't miss out on any of the action. We want to hear from you, so leave us a comment or review. Until next time, bye.